Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 to 3, and then 12 to 13. And the Word of God says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Make level paths for your feet, so that the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed." May God bless the reading of His Word.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And beautiful music today. I especially love the a cappella version of it as well, with my soul and the harmony. Hearing everybody sing, and appreciate that. Great message to the children today. I've always thought that the messages for our children's sermonettes aren't just for the children. They're for the older children. And great message today. So thanks to everyone. And it is good to be here. I was the associate minister here for 5 years, from 1984 to 1989. So I know a lot of the people at Kings Highway. Many of you here I don't know, but I'm glad to be with you today. And I'm certainly glad that David Bryce, my brother-in-law, invited me to come back and be here today to preach for him. I wanted to begin by saying that just about this time of year, last year, I read a very, very interesting and helpful article. And in that article, it mentions a word from psychologists that tell us that this time of year, for many people, the days shortly after New Year's Day are difficult, stressful, painful in some ways. They said in this article that people's troubles seem to be even more pronounced this time of year. Some people have said that's just kind of how many feel, especially in the winter. Now, concerning the scripture that Ellie read to us this morning, may have been at the beginning of a new year. We don't really know. But the people to whom Hebrews was written were very, very troubled. This is a wonderfully helpful book that is oftentimes called the letter to the Hebrews. There are many New Testament scholars that help us understand that the title, the letter to the Hebrews, is misleading. Two of our wonderful ministers, New Testament scholars, preachers in the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, Gene Boring and Fred Craddock, give us some substance to what that means. And they share with us that Hebrews isn't really a letter. It's a sermon. It's a sermon that was written by an unknown author who wrote sometime before the end of the first century. It was his intention for this sermon to be shared to a congregation or congregations not of Hebrews, not of Jews, but rather certain Christians. And it was read in his absence. He wasn't able to be there. Now, I'll give you one quote from Dr. Boring. Hebrews seems to be addressed to one or more congregations in the same general setting that contain Christians of both Jewish and Gentile backgrounds in a context heavily influenced by Jewish history and tradition. So the author of Hebrews seems to be a preacher who's not able to be with these people in person, but he's certainly there in his heart. He's very much there in spirit, and he's there with these people in their time of need through this sermon that he intended to be read in his absence. I shared with the congregation at the 9:15 service this morning in the sanctuary that kind of reminds me of a sermon that I had prepared to preach at First Christian Church in Hot Springs, Arkansas, 6 weeks ago on the second Sunday of Advent. Their minister was in South Louisiana, and he asked me if I would preach for him. I'm not sure how your weather was that weekend, but we had some brutal weather hit central Arkansas. We had a bad ice storm, and we have a lot of hills near our home, and I was not able to get to Hot Springs. And so, instead of being able to be there in person to deliver my sermon, we used modern day technology, which obviously wasn't available back in the first century. But I was able to email my sermon manuscript to the elder of that church who was serving as worship leader that day, and he was able to read my sermon in my absence. Now, my sermon that I wrote for the people of First Christian Church in Hot Springs didn't have anything to do with issues that they were having. I hope they don't have issues. But this particular sermon with the title of Hebrews is addressed to a congregation or congregations that were very much in crisis. So what's going on here? In my wording, from what we can understand by reading through this sermon, these people were in a spiritual drought. They were very much in danger of losing their faith. Their candles of hope, so to speak, had burned down to just a flicker. And when you lose your hope in God through Christ, you've lost the most important thing in your life. Now, in their defense, they didn't just suddenly decide to call it quits for no reason. They were going through some very, very difficult times, and we can read about those. Some of these folks had been in prison. Some of them had their property taken away. They were facing hostility and persecution and even abuse in public settings. There were internal problems going on within the membership, and they just seemed to be tired of it all. To the point where they're just ready to give up. And I can understand why they might feel that way. Because you and I know that when you become a Christian, all of your problems don't just suddenly and magically go away. It's a tremendous help, of course. But becoming a Christian can sometimes even bring new issues in our faith life, in our life in general. Because Jesus said, take up your cross and follow me. And the reality of that means that there are times we have hardships and struggles. So Hebrews is addressed to people who have lost their spiritual get up and go. And I think their biggest problem was that they just didn't seem to want to get it back. People in crisis. Now, I'm very, very thankful that Kings Highway Christian Church is an extremely healthy church, and it is. You all are a wonderful congregation. Ellie, David, wonderful ministers. But all of us know that there are times in our life that we get tired, we get beat down, and the potential is to lose heart. We all go through it. Think about tomorrow. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is a reminder to us of the hardships of the cross he carried. But we all have our crosses to bear. I can assure you and be very honest in saying that in my 19 and a half years at the last church that I was minister of, Park Hill Christian Church in North Little Rock, there were a handful of times when I came home at night and said to my wonderful wife, if someone calls me again and is going through something painful, I just don't know if I have enough in me to do it. We all get there. There are times when we wear out, physically, mentally, emotionally, and yes, even spiritually. So this message through Hebrews is that of encouragement. It's a challenge for us in spite of any troubles that we're going through. Hold on. Keep the faith. You're not alone. Don't give up. That's what it says to us. And then specifically in chapter 12, which Ellie read beautifully, part of it, the selected verses that I had chosen, were to gain strength from the people who have gone before us. Now, that includes biblical people of the faith, and that includes others whose faith and example have meant something to you in your life. Remember these people, we're encouraged to do, and may they give us strength by the way that they live their life. We're instructed to throw away the things that slow us down, like sin and doubt and the temptation to give up. All of the things that get in the way of our being faithful followers of Jesus Christ. And then we're to look to Jesus, who is the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. He is our ultimate example to follow. And as we know, He's always with us to give us what we need. We also heard in that scripture that we're to run with perseverance the race that's before us. I realize that that's a metaphor, but it just kind of stirs up a little anxiety in me because I hate to run. I don't enjoy it. If it involves an activity like frisbee or a ball of some sort, then I enjoy it, but not just running by itself. And there are many people in this congregation that know that when I was growing up, my dad disciplined me by making me run. And I had to run a fair amount. I was probably in as good a physical condition as any kid growing up in the state of Louisiana. Even on trips, even on vacations, if I was bothering my sisters in the car, we would pull over on the shoulder of the interstate and open the door, and there I'd go running on the shoulder of the interstate. So I don't really enjoy running, but I love, you can see why. I do think it was a great punishment. By the way, we disciplined our son that way when he was growing up. I don't think he's running today either. Well, I love to watch others run, track meets, the Olympics, Summer Olympics especially. And speaking of which, many of you know that the world's fastest man is a Jamaican by the name of Usain Bolt, who holds the world record in 100 and 200 meter sprints. He is as gifted as any athlete that there is in the world. But if he tried to run that fast over a long distance, he would never make it. The only way that he can run a distance is to slow down. Run with perseverance the race that's before us. Life is not a sprint. It's more like a marathon. It's not like under normal conditions we do it quickly and then it's over. It's really more like that marathon where we have to pace ourselves. And you know, that's very hard for us to do in this fast-paced, instant world that we've gotten used to, where we can press a button and instantly send a message to someone on the other side of the world. It's amazing what we can do now. We're geared these days for instant results, and we don't have that opportunity, especially connected to the Christian faith. I'll tell a story on myself. When I'm driving, it drives me absolutely crazy to be behind somebody that's under normal driving conditions is driving much slower than the speed limit, significantly slower than the speed limit. It just kind of gets to me. I seem to be in this hurry all the time. Well, it happened to me about a year ago. And I was behind this man, 10 miles an hour under the speed limit. And the longer I was behind him, the higher my blood pressure was raised. And I'm not proud of this, but I got so frustrated after a good period of time that it just kind of happened where I hit the horn. And I saw his eyes in his rearview mirror, and I'm like, go, go, you know. Well, I know he didn't appreciate that. And when I had an opportunity to pass him, I got even with him, and I glanced over there, and he was looking at me. I was horrified because he was one of the most faithful members of the church I was pastoring. What am I going to say to him on Sunday? Hey, Joe, I saw you on the road. Didn't know if you knew it was me, so I honked and waved at you. And I thought, well, that'd be a lie. I'm getting deeper into this. Well, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Because this fast-paced, instant world doesn't really work when it comes to the Christian faith. We can't put it in a microwave oven and then it's done. It's a lifelong process. And there are, for all of us, struggles along the way. And so this great sermon called Hebrews teaches us that when we are tired, when we're going through tough times and we are tempted to lose heart, even when we're down on our knees begging for mercy for whatever it is that's trying to do us in, that we're to remain strong and faithful, knowing that we have this great cloud of witnesses surrounding us. And even more than that, knowing that we have the one who is always with us, the one who knows what it's like to go through every challenge and pain and difficulty in life except for sin, and who is always with us, always, to see us through. The one who lived his life so faithfully, serving and loving God and people all the way to a cross. This is a great, great book in the New Testament. And friends, if we'll just follow its teachings, and no matter what it is that comes our way in life, we'll get through it. We'll get through it. Amen. all